Really, like what we say, I'd say like consists of is one kind of like this horizontal consistency, and two vertical consistency, and then three. I guess there is a third thing, which is like actually a pyramid. So the idea of the pyramid part, just to tackle these in turn, right, is that when we're constructing and when we're like delivering information, it's good to kind of give a summary, I guess as quickly as possible as to what we'll be talking about, and then to dive deeper into each of the sections. So if you like go back to your 5-paragraph essay in high school or college, right? This is like your topic paragraph would be like what you'd open with, and then you go deeper into each one of those supporting paragraphs. And the idea, when you look at this structure, is that the opening slide will really be problem to solution. Like this is, or we could put to recommendation. And in order for you to make a recommendation, what you're doing is you want, supporting argument number one, right, number two, etc. Right? You want to support the recommendation with supporting arguments. And then each one of these supporting arguments has evidence. Right? And this is why, right, people call this a pyramid principle, because if you look at it, right, it starts, each one of these, it turtles all the way down, right? If you need to split this out, I forget which lesson, I think down here, you can see, okay, well, really, each one of these supporting arguments is a whole section, right? And so you need 3 slides or more to support it, and then each one of these slides might have points below it. So when you're actually structuring this stuff, what are these arrows, right? The arrows is our horizontal consistency. The idea is that as you read through each slide, you should be able to just read the top line, right? And that top line should be a conclusion, essentially. Like this is what happened, then this, right? And if you just read those top lines, they should flow one from the other, okay? And that's like our horizontal consistency. A good way of thinking of that is kind of this overall structure of, problem to solution. Like here's the issue. I'll show you an example presentation in a second. But like here's the problem with mining. It's like the mining sector, I think, is what we'll go through. Hold on. Yeah. Right, so here's the problem with mining. Mining productivity has declined 30% over the past decade, right? So this is the problem, and then ultimately we hope McKinsey will give us some sort of recommendation, right? So they're setting up, so problem to solution is one thing, and then start broad and then go narrow is the next thing, if you're looking for like a sequence, right? And then, of course, there's like, just moving over time as well. So mining productivity has declined 30% over the next decade. Here's, right, this is the broad, by the way. So it's problem and it's broad. And now we give you more information. The decline prevails across commodities as well as all major mining geographies, right? So we can just read each top line and it flows one to the other. The industry also faces dramatic capital. So they're just telling us like, hey, and why do they do this? Because there's always like this incumbency problem of people don't want to change, right? They want to keep, doing what they've been doing in their job. So they're basically making the case, hey, like you cannot keep doing what you've been doing. And that you'll see that's how they open up a lot of their presentations. This is the horizontal consistency. It's just the idea that we should be able to read the top line in every slide and it's going to flow. Okay? And now here's the solution, right? Mining companies can pursue 4 levers to thrive in tomorrow's challenging and uncertain mining environment, right? So now that they've got our attention, give us the solution. If you do not, so one thing you kind of want to do is like last times is think through, okay, what is the question they're asking? Or like what are they here for, to figure out? Because sometimes you're given these vague problems, but you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of, okay, what is really the question that they're asking, or that this person would be concerned about, and start there, right? The other thing that we talked about with horizontal, with this kind of overall structure, is answers first, right? So they give you the problem, and then very quickly, they're not waiting to the end of the presentation, building a case slowly and then hitting with the recommendation. They're telling you it right away. Okay, there's no surprises. And then they'll have to make the case afterwards that these are the 4 things and support this. All right? So that's the overall structure, and that's our horizontal consistency. The vertical consistency is the fact that as I go from the conclusion to the supporting evidence, this supporting evidence supports, right, the conclusion that's up top. All right, so mining productivity has declined 30%. We should look here, right, and just kind of quickly see that has fallen 30%. We see that it's 110, and now it's down to 80 or something like that. All right, so this is showing us that I don't know what PA stands for, but one thing that you'll note is that as you look through these decks, you'll see that there's a good amount of annotations, right, really supporting what they're trying to draw your attention to. In general, they're doing a lot of the work for you in terms of telling you, here's what I want you to pay attention to with this chart. All right, and annotation, well, the reason why I say this is we'll spend some time on annotations, and this is why, right? Because it just draws your attention. It says, hey, this is what I want you to get out of this chart. The other thing I should say is, if something does not support this top level conclusion, it doesn't really belong in the chart. You should question whether or not it belongs in that chart. You can always split it out. If it doesn't support this top level conclusion, you can always split it, and you want to make that point, you can split that out into a separate chart, right? Or you could kind of apply the pyramid principle and have a point here, a heading here, and then that supports an overall point over here, right? Which you'll see things like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So in terms of, right, what we covered, we have this kind of overall pyramid, right? And then we have these 2 components that we want to keep throughout our presentation. One is the horizontal consistency, right? Where as you read each top line, they should flow. And a good kind of overall structure is problem to solution / recommendation, and then start broad, go narrow, right? And then this vertical consistency idea, whereas everything in a specific slide should support that top level argument, right? And the top level argument should essentially encapsulate the evidence below. The other thing to note, right, is, and I say this is the easiest thing to correct, and what I see all the time is people will be instead of saying this decline here, this is a conclusion, right? The decline across most commodities as well as prevails across most commodities as well as across all major mining industries, right? That's the conclusion that you would draw from this chart, and showing decrease, 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 etc. It is not saying productivity across industries, right? That is not the top line for then leaving the reader to draw the conclusion. It draws the conclusion for you, right? So these should always be conclusions, and that will also allow these things to flow a lot more easily. Questions about this? This is actually quite important, and not only applies to, I would say, data analysis stuff, but just communication in general. Just to give you an example of this, because this is how I was effectively trained. If you look at the curriculum, okay, we got a guy waving, and then we have some questions. I'm trying to put myself in the student's mind. What are the questions you have when you think about first starting to code? Can I do it? Is it even worth it? There's a problem. Solution, right? Here, go do it. And then, is it worth it? Here's some data showing you the value proposition of it, right? So right away, as quickly as possible, that's what I'm trying to do, okay? And you could see, if you see the way I teach, so much of it is kind of here's what I want to do. We have this problem. All right, here's the next thing. Here's the next thing. Here's the next thing. All right. So questions about pyramid principle, horizontal consistency, vertical consistency. Okay, nice. And then the last thing I'd say is, I just heard this actually today. Writing is rewriting what has already been rewritten. All right. So like I find this very true. And one piece of advice is, say you're about to deliver, you're about to turn in kind of like a report or whatever. Like close your you write it. It's good. Feels good to you. You got it. It's due in say 20 minutes. Close your laptop. Walk around the block. Come back. Reread it. And basically what that does is it just gives polish to it. What I do personally is I try to write the curriculum a couple weeks in advance, forget it, and then read it. Right? I move on to the next section, during those 2 weeks. That's what I did for this section, for example, and then read it. And the whole purpose is I'm now taking it from the reader's perspective and always being like, that doesn't make sense. I don't know why I did it that way. That doesn't make sense. Right? And rewriting it. All right? So that just happens, right? You want to get into the I'm no longer the author, I'm the reader mode when you're doing this stuff. Okay? Cool. All right, so these are, readings. This is then like kind of a lab. And then this is using the OLIST kind of charts, exploration charts, to then come up with, right, structure it in such a way that you're making an argument, right? And it tells you what to do, right? It tells you, hey, these are the sections we want. And basically use the charts to build make a case. If you want, you can either kind of just select the charts you want, or if you can take like screenshots. On the Mac, I press Command Shift and 4 to take a screenshot, and you can just take a screenshot and move that into a Colab, or you can just, but rearrange these cells or whatever. But you want to build a case, or you could just draw it out on a piece of paper. But go to the next step of, after we do the exploration, how do we present this? One last thing is, and I've made this point in the last class too, you moving to the presentation even before you finish really doing a deep dive, right? Squeezing everything you can out of the data is in my view the correct approach, because what you're doing is you don't want to that presentation. By starting to build your presentation, you'll start to see where you have holes in your argument and what your presentation needs, like what further research you need to really complete your case, right? And to complete your argument. Okay, so that's why I recommend moving to the presentation even before you feel ready, because that way you're not just waiting around, right, going down these rabbit holes, but finding the holes in your argument by trying to construct a presentation. Cool. All right, so this is what I'll deploy. I'll also deploy this reading on, I think a lot of you all know about correlation versus causation, but reread it. It takes 3 minutes, and it's very important. And then like structuring experiments. This just seems obvious. You have to remember, like, people won the Nobel Prize in economics like 5 years ago for just saying, hey, when we do research, we should actually structure random controlled trials, like structuring this structuring experiments thing, because like no researchers were actually doing this. They weren't actually structuring experiments. So if you follow this stuff, it turns out it's very valuable. All right, I'll stop recording.